Today is Friday, September 23rd, and pursuant to the provisions of the Rhode Island Open Meetings Act, the Public Utilities Commission is holding an open meeting. We're here in our hearing room at 89 Jefferson Boulevard in Warwick. This is not a hearing, so the PUC will not be accepting any oral comments. This open meeting is being streamed live on a streaming link, which is located on our website. Now, there's a number of items that we have to take care of today. Some of these, I know that there's some interest on the winter rate increase, but for those of you who are watching, there's 3 items that you need to take care of first before we get to that. The first item is docket number, well, first of all, I have with me my fellow commissioners, Abigail Anthony and Jack Revens, and we have staff with us here too. First item is docket number 2204 REG, Narragansett Electric Company, doing business as Rhode Island Energy. In this docket, the company filed its annual renewable energy growth program factor and renewable energy growth reconciliation factors are effective on October 1st. Filing is submitted in accordance with the company's approved tariff. The commission will review the record and vote on this. This item here pertains to charges for the renewable energy program, and with the reconciliation, it results in a decrease, a slight decrease of 92 cents on a typical customer bill. I don't think there are any issues associated with this. The division has reviewed it. Everything seems to be in order on this. And I do have I was going to make a motion to approve the combined renewable energy growth factors, all of which represent decreases from the current rates as appropriately calculated. Do I hear a second on that?
Second?
Any discussion?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next item is docket number 2219EL, Narragansett Electric Company doing business as Rhode Island Energy. In this docket, the company submitted its annual pension and post-retirement benefits other than pensions adjustment factor filing. This filing provides for the reconciliation of the company's actual pension and PBOP expenses, pension benefits other than post-retirement benefits other than pensions, expense for the 12-month period ending March 31st, 2022, and the allowance included in distribution rates. This is submitted pursuant to the pension adjustment mechanism provision approved by the Commission. And in it, just like the prior one, in this one, the company is proposing a credit or a decrease of 0.00045 per kilowatt hour. Again, I don't think there's much to discuss here, if anything. So I have a motion, move to approve the pension adjustment credit factor of 0.00045 per kilowatt hour for effect October 1st, 2022 as appropriately calculated.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next item is docket 5098, Narragansett Electric Company doing business with Rhode Island Energy. This docket relates to the company's fiscal year 2022 electric infrastructure safety and reliability plan approved by the PUC in this docket. The company submitted its annual reconciliation for fiscal year 2022 on the electric side in proposed factors. This filing provides for recovery of the actual plant and service for discretionary and non-discretionary capital investment and associated costs of removal, the actual vegetation management, operation and maintenance expenses, the actual inspection and maintenance program, and other O&M expenses for the period April 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2022. This also is a decrease. There is one item here that there was an approximately $300,000 downward adjustment to rate base as a result of the company's review of the classification of expenses and customer contributions related to a 2020 distributed generation interconnection project. The company is in the process of reviewing more of these types of projects, and there could be additional adjustments to rate base which could affect the rates. Although we are approving these factors, the results of the final report could result in additional adjustments to rate base in future ISR filing. But I will make a motion to approve the proposed electric ISR reconciliation factors for effect October 1st, 2022. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Any discussion on this?
None.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. I have everything covered, Council, on that. So So the next item is actually two items that we've been addressing together. One is docket 2207GE, which related to the what's referred to generally as the Attorney General's credit of $50 million for electric and gas customers. 32 and a half of it relates to electric, and 17.5 relates to gas. And the other is docket 4978, which is the last resort service rates, which were filed, and it's the increase that we had hearings about starting last Friday and continued into Monday. This matter here, I just have some introductory comments before we get started in discussions, but this agenda item is clearly an excruciating one. While I know electric costs do increase over time, I don't think any of us ever imagined that the cost of supply could rise so dramatically in 1 year. But before we get started in discussing the rate request that's in front of us in this docket, I want to talk a little bit about what is now happening in Massachusetts, because I think we need to keep in view what's going on in Massachusetts as we make decisions today, and that'll be clear in a second. We had testimony in this case about the causes of the shocking spike in the wholesale electric costs in the region for the winter, and the testimony informed us that some Massachusetts utilities, including National Grid in Massachusetts, were due to announce their winter rates for their commodity service, which is basically the equivalent of last resort service that we have here, and they call it basic service up there. Now, National Grid made its filing this week with their regulator in Massachusetts, referred to as the DPU, and it covers the period November through April. It's a close match to ours, which is October through March. And it was shockingly higher than I ever would have expected. The Massachusetts rate is a staggering 33.8 cents per kilowatt hour. And this is a price that was unimaginable only a year ago. From an energy markets perspective, it even seems surreal to me. And it could hit like a wrecking ball over there to our neighbors. We already know that the rate of proposal of 17.7 cents proposed here in Rhode Island is likely to cause hardship. I can't even get my head around 33 cents. That Massachusetts increase is double the increase proposed here in Rhode Island. But fortunately, we are not facing that price in Rhode Island. But the winter markets have become so volatile from so many different factors that we discussed at the hearings, that it is no longer unimaginable that pricing could continue to rise to something far worse than 17 cents at some point in the future here in Rhode Island. Now, I am not suggesting that we will have 33 cents next winter, but I am concerned that next winter could be higher than the 17 cents proposed today. So why is there such a big difference this winter between Massachusetts' price of 33 cents and the Rhode Island price of 17 cents? It relates to the way we require Rhode Island Energy to procure power compared to the Massachusetts procurement practice. Massachusetts procures semi-annually in 50% blocks close in time to the period of service. In contrast, we have what we refer to as a laddered approach, which purchases a series of power blocks that span over 36 months. Our procurement requirements smooth out the ups and downs of short-term market fluctuations over time, and the benefits that Rhode Island has obtained from that procurement method are clear from what we're experiencing today by comparison to Massachusetts. As we address the issues today, I think we need to be mindful that our laddered procurement method will inevitably result in the older contracts with lower pricing sequentially expiring over time, being replaced with new contracts for blocks of power bid in the prevailing market conditions. We can hope the wholesale market stabilizes, but even if it does stabilize, there is a significant likelihood that the blended prices we get from the next round of periodic procurements will cause last resort service prices for next winter to be even higher than the price we're facing today. And that is the alarming data point that I think we need to keep in view today. My fellow commissioners, you may also have some preliminary comments, but what I plan to do right now is very briefly identify the issues we have to address today and propose a sequence to address them, and then we can start the conversation, unless you wanted to step in and say anything at this moment before I do that.
Why don't you go through the issues, and then I have some remarks that I'd like to respond to. Respond to it.
Okay, very good. There are three categories of issues which we identified at the hearings, and I went through during the hearings. First, All the parties that were in the case, that were interveners, all the parties agreed on the legal standard for cost recovery, which, as a threshold matter, turns on whether Rhode Island Energy complied with the procurement plan. So we need to make a factual finding with regard to compliance, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. Second, there were two independent sources of funding that are available to provide significant assistance in mitigating the impact of these winter rates. The first, of course, is Attorney General Nerona's settlement credit, which is worth $32.5 million for customers, and we're very, very fortunate to have this credit available. It goes a long way to soften the hardships that will undoubtedly be experienced this winter by the rising costs. But we will need to determine the timing of the credit, which was discussed at the hearings. The second source is Governor McKee's $3.8 million credit that will provide significant additional assistance for the low-income customers. And similar to the Attorney General's credit, we need to determine the timing of that credit as well. And finally, the third category is the extent to which we may want to mitigate the effects of the rate increase through some form of a deferral, which pushes rate impacts on the customers to future periods or a future period. Now, while there were several variations of a deferral that we discussed, there were two primary deferral proposals, which were the main focus of the discussion. One was a proposal to zero out the fixed customer charge on the bills of residential customers in the A60 and A60 rate classes, as well as the customer charge applied to small businesses in the CO6 rate class. The other was a proposal to defer all or a significant portion of the $195 million increase in last resort rates to a future period by spreading the increase out over a 12-month period through last resort rates. While the circumstances are very different today, this proposal does mirror a mitigation measure that was employed back in 2018. So I'm going to stop there, see if the sequence makes sense to you, and then we can start talking about things. But does that sequence make sense?
Yeah, that sequence makes sense. And do you mind if I take, Chairman, just a minute to reflect on the public comment that we heard last week?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what we heard and what we've heard in years past when we do this docket and we hear about other dockets is life is stressful and hard, and people are doing everything they can just to make it through the day. And we have to be careful with each other. And I'm so grateful to the work of Governor McKee and Attorney General Nerona to secure the funds that will enable mitigation of the rate increase for many customers this winter and provide a winter bill decrease for low-income customers. But I know that's not enough. The Governor and the Attorney General are providing meaningful relief this winter, but it doesn't change the fact that many Rhode Islanders can't afford utilities today and won't be able to afford them in April or August or next winter. The Commission, the division, policymakers, the administration, the utility, our stakeholders, we do and we all need to continue to focus on reducing the real costs of the state's utility systems by seeking the least cost solution to policy and utility system goals. And if stakeholders are going to continue to use the utility bill to advance public policy, we must pursue fairer, progressive rate design so that the most vulnerable customers don't carry the heaviest burden of advancing other policy goals. But we can't order a PIP from the bench. We can't be arbitrary. We need proposals that are supported by evidence. That means we need the legislature to pass a PIP or to have the parties bring us a proposal for a PIP. If one person had brought us a PIP, I'd have voted for it this year. In 2018, in docket 4770, Chair Curran, Commissioner Gold, and I ordered the regular collection of data to enable the parties to update Mr. Roger Colton's analysis on the incidence, depth, and age of customer arrears, and to show with evidence whether the tiered A60 discount provides low-income customers with an effective opportunity to pay their bills, and whether it provides a meaningful opportunity to avoid the loss of service due to non-payment, and whether the deferred payment agreement programs are providing an effective opportunity for customers to retire unpaid balances. I did this to enable the parties to come to us with an evidentiary basis for more progressive rates. I've been clear in my support for more progressive rate structures year after year, and I'm waiting and ready for that proposal.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Revens, do you have any preliminary comments before we get started?
Not yet, Mr. Chairman. I will as we proceed. Thank you.
Okay, so just following the sequence that I laid out, the first is the legal standard. Now, there was an initial comments and reaction about why we couldn't just deny the rate increases and cause Rhode Island Energy shareholders to absorb all or part of it. And I identified what the legal standard was that applies to that we just can't do something that we might like to do. We have to follow the law. And the standard that I laid out both at the public comment hearing, and then I did it again with all the parties during the evidentiary hearings, and I'm going to read it again here, because every single party that was in the case agreed that this was the correct legal standard that was applicable to cost recovery. And just to be clear, cost recovery is different from what the rates are. Cost recovery is basically a decision that says, does the utility have the right to recover the cost over some period of time in some manner? Once that's determined, then the rate making occurs as to when and what the rates would be to do that. But the standard for the cost recovery was, in order for the commission to deny the cost increase, there must be evidence to show that the utility did not comply with the acquisition plan, or that the utility acted negligently or imprudently in making the purchases. In other words, the commission cannot order Rhode Island Energy shareholders to absorb the cost increase unless there is an evidentiary case that proves non-compliance or negligent execution of the purchase plan which caused higher costs to be incurred. And I read this again to all the parties and the attorneys, and everyone agreed that that was the applicable standard to which this commission is bound. When we got to the end of the case, I went around the room again at the end of the evidentiary hearing and asked if anyone had determined that there was evidence that was presented in this case that would support a finding that they did not comply with the plan. And each of the parties, looking at the evidence, and I know that we looked at it as well independently, had concluded that there was no evidence to suggest that they had not complied with the plan or otherwise acted in some negligent way. And so that's the standard. It was never disputed by any of the parties. And the first issue here is really the question of whether they complied. And as I look at it, I don't think there's any evidence except that they did. And I do have a motion on that, but I'll stop there to see if you have any comments.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'd like to add to that, so that everyone who may be looking at this today or in the future will understand what you mean by the parties. The parties that appeared before us were first the petitioner or the applicant, which is the energy company, which was asking to be reimbursed for the additional cost that they will incur to purchase electricity. But the other parties that were here at the hearing were first the Division of Public Utilities and Carriers, which was here with their staff and with a lawyer from the Attorney General's office, and their role is to advocate for the consumer at these hearings, and that's what they did. Also at the hearing representing the consumers was the Office of Energy Resources, which is the Governor's Department of Energy Resources. They were represented by counsel, and they were also here on behalf of the consumer. Thirdly, the Attorney General, separately from representing the division, was here representing the public through counsel. And lastly, there was an attorney participating in the hearings who intervened in behalf of the George Wiley Center. So that when the chair is referring to the parties, he is saying that A, the parties all agreed, including all the consumer representatives, as to what the legal standard was. And secondly, at the end of the hearing, after all the evidence had been presented, they agreed that the petitioner, the applicant, had met their burden to prove that they had properly procured the energy for the coming winter. Now, the way they procure it isn't the way we go to the grocery store and buy groceries, or go to the gas station and buy gas, or the way we call the oil company for delivery. They procure the energy according to a plan. That plan was established by this commission several years ago, long before I became a member of the commission. That plan was carefully and thoughtfully and responsibly designed after public hearings and discussion. And that plan, as the chairman said earlier in this meeting, was to spread out the acquisition of the purchase of the power over a longer period of time. And the obvious intent of that laddering and layering of the acquisition of power, which is the electricity that passes through the lines from the transmission facility to our homes and businesses, was to spread out the cost that would be incurred to purchase the power to minimize large spikes in the price. And that plan has proven effective, because this year, as we're facing this very unfortunate situation, only a smaller percentage of the power, far less than half, is being purchased this fall. All the rest of it was purchased, some of it 18 months ago, some of it 12 months ago, when prices were less. And that's reflected in the size of the proposed increase, which is far different than what we've seen at the pump and what we've seen in our oil tanks. And interestingly and sadly and unfortunately for our neighbors in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, they don't have that type of purchase of power plan. They buy it now. And their proposed rate, which I read last night on the front page of the Boston Globe, is shocking, because they're proposing to charge almost double what our electric bills will be this winter if this proposed increase is approved. Theirs is going to be twice as high for the same power. Now, why is this happening? The governor said we shouldn't blame it on Ukraine, and he's right. But there's a lot of things that you can attribute it to. I'd rather use the word attribute than blame, because I believe that every time people make decisions that are supposed to be in the public interest, they try to do that in what they think is the best way possible. So now that we don't produce power in Rhode Island except for some wind and some solar. So we have to buy it from somewhere else. So everyone who is selling power to a third party has options as to where they sell it. And it's no different than any other commodity. They sell it where they get the best price. So now that power is being constrained in Europe and other parts of the globe, it's more advantageous for some people who produce power to sell it in other places for higher prices. So that creates more competition for the product. It's in finite supply, and the price goes up. So we're faced with that. We're also faced with the fact that much of our energy is produced from gas, and that gas runs through a process and comes out the other end of it as electricity. The way we get gas is through pipelines, and the pipelines are constrained. And what that means in simple English is they don't have enough capacity to get us all the gas that we ideally would like to have. And the people who own the pipelines control what gas flows through their pipes, and that's not regulated at the state level. So that the people who control the distribution system are able to charge more money when demand goes up and the pipe is restricted. And if you want to pay more, then your gas will go through the pipe, and if you want to pay less, it doesn't. And we haven't got enough green energy available yet to make up the difference. So all of those things have combined together to put us in the situation that we're in today, in having to consider the proposal that's before us to allow the utility company, the energy company, to pass on the increased cost that they're incurring to purchase electricity to send it to our homes and businesses. So I just wanted to say that by way of background before we get into the specific discussion of the motions that will come before the commission this morning for consideration and decision. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. I do have a motion that I'll make, and it's that the Commission finds that Rhode Island Energy complied with the company's last resort service procurement plan. Do I hear a second?
Second?
And any further discussion on this? On that particular finding? No?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So the next item.
Mic check!
Mic check!
Okay, look, ladies
You
and,
heard us.
ladies and gentlemen, you know,
When you
when
didn't
we had the
listen.
hearings, everyone
Mic
was really
check!
acting
Mic
like
check! You heard us, but you didn't listen.
You heard us, but you didn't listen.
We're gonna take a break right now. This meeting
You
is
heard us,
adjourned.
but you didn't listen.
You heard us, but you didn't listen.
We're gonna reset.
When we talk about parties, the most important party are the people right here. You want to talk about all the different stakeholders, you want to talk about the legal counsel, these are the people that are going to be impacted by these rate hikes. Historic level rate hikes. So you can hide behind all the technicalities and the legality issues, but the matter of the fact is the impact this is going to have is increased evictions, increased homelessness, and guess what? That blood is on your hands.
Elderly will die. Children will suffer. It is immoral, and the religious community stands to say you have an obligation as a commission to do what is right, to do what is fair. And so we ask you, who are leaders, who God has put in place, to do the right thing. Because children will die. Children will be separated. They will not eat. Families will have to choose, do they pay their rent or do children go home in cold houses with lights off and suffer, and it will raise more money in the state because somebody who had the right choice to make a right decision right now for the future of our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, we are hurting them, and it's gone on far too long. So drop it off the docket. 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 Children drop it off the docket. Elderly drop it off the docket. People are trying to off the docket. Drop it off the docket. Because somebody went out to do a family because they fraud could not have adequate heat.
Drop it off the docket.
Drop it off.
Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket.
Hey, the meeting's
Drop
not
it
going
off
to
the
continue.
docket. Drop it off the 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 docket.
Say that again.
The information that they're trying to say, their opinion needs to be put forward. If you guys do this,
So what you saying, you talking for those politicians. We're to
saying
stop
it's
it.
a-
Regardless, sir. Regardless what your job is. I understand your job. But we need to voice our opinion to them. Not you to control us of your law. Your law has the same difference they got. And we have laws too. We have law of freedom of speech. That's what we're doing. We are freedom of speech. We have the right to fight for our rights of what they're doing to us as a bill. We are not a bill. We are people. We are people of living. We are not a person that you abuse. And they abusing us.
that's not the
What point are you getting to?
Yes,
us
it
at?
is.
That's the point.
This is the Public Utility Commission.
That's right.
We are the public.
meeting.
We are the public.
Drop it off the docket. 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 Drop it off the
You have the
docket.
audacity to
Drop it
lie.
off the docket.
This is not about the matter. The matter of fact is these people are here because they don't impact. You want to smile, you want to laugh about it. This is ridiculous. You are not here taking this to the public. You should be ashamed. You should be ashamed.
Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket.
Out of all due
Drop it
respect,
off the docket.
what do you
Drop
think
it off the docket.
by laughing at us and making a clown out of us? That's rude. That's very disrespectful and very rude.
Pay your salaries. It's not funny.
You,
Devil laughs, sir. I merely smile.
but that's still laughing. You're laughing at us. You're laughing at me. What do you think?
Shame!
Oh, even a grin. What are you thinking that this is grinnable? This is not grinnable. You talking about people, children, lives are in stake. Now my children are suffering. Because you know why? Y'all gave me a bill of $5,000 for 1 year. Where in the hell I got $5,000 worth of electricity or gas in my home that I rent? Now, did you ever think about the people I live in the roof? They might have something wrong with their equipment, and I'm paying for it. Are you looking at that? or whether you will see me with my children on the corner of the street of this Rhode Island area, regardless what area it is. Lincoln, Providence, East Providence, North Providence, whatever. I'm going to hold a bag and I'm be on your, while you going by the street and you got a nice house, I got to have a cup and asking my children to ask you for a dime. Do you think that's fair? Do you really think that's fair? I got to be on the corner off an on-ramp of a highway, and my kids and I have a cup saying, can you please donate something? So I can turn around and get food, and it ain't enough money. It's not enough money even if I was out there doing it. It's not enough money.
You guys are returning to audit
What do we want?
You've
Justice.
been meaning
What
to
do we
hold
want?
me back
Now.
now.
What do we
Commissioner, if we
want?
could just let
Justice.
you know that this person, there was a promise made. And as the clergy of Rhode Island, I have to stand for the moral obligation for what is right. We know you all can make a decision. We ask you to think and reconsider because there are children that's going to die.
There is a definite procedural injustice here. I heard you say that the commission listened to all this and then made a decision after you decided there was no procedural injustice. I heard a young clergyman say that when this energy was purchased, the public was promised time and time again there would be no rate hike. And here it is, 6 months later, and there's a rate hike. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you've never been in any of these people's homes or lived on an income. What's the average income for a house of 4 people?
Less than 50 grand.
Less than 50 grand.
Could you please stand?
I'll say
How about a retired person? I'm thinking, what do I get with retirement?
you 18.
$690 from Social Security to live on.
Just for safety.
$690. How am I going to do that?
I work in the media.
And now
I deal with far
I'm
harsher
on the road.
circumstances than
I know
this.
people who get $2,000 a month.
Your name,
and
sir?
Then you're going to raise these rates. I mean, even if you do electricity and then people start heating their homes with the gas stove, which people do. People do that. All right? Then we have fires. Then people die. And then you lose customers, by the way. And then, what if the gas goes up? Now what are they going to use to heat their home? Kerosene, their gas grill?
Fires.
Come on now. Come on now. Jesus said shelter the homeless.
So, Commissioner, we're asking you to consider
You might,
because people's lives are at risk here.
I'm not done yet.
Go ahead.
Because let me tell you,
Keep talking.
let me tell you, you use up all your credit with the Penelec company or whatever this company is here, this electricity. You know what people do? They start putting the electricity in their children's names. And you know what I have to deal with in my job? I have to deal with these people who are newly married, who go get a house, they try to get electricity set up and they can't because their parents used up all their credit and they never knew it. It happened to who?
Happened to me.
Take notes!
You're listening to
And
people with
you know what? I don't think, I have all the compassion for you as a public servant. Because I don't think you really know
He's
these
not even looking at us.
situations.
He's not even looking
I
at
don't
us.
think, I do not think you know that people actually do that, and that there's people out there, and not just one or two. In my job, I spend $50,000 a year helping the poor pay electric and water bills. And these are the situations I deal with daily. And I am looking at the people, and I am seeing the kids cry. And I know there are teachers who say the kids can't get an education because they're hungry. And then who does it fall on? The teachers then to buy free breakfast and free lunch, and then the taxpayers get hit again. I'm sorry, this rate hike should not go through. I'm not sorry for these people. I'm happy for them if the rate hike doesn't go through. I'm sorry for maybe the swimming pool. And the indoor swimming pool doesn't get heated this winter. You know, I don't want to be facetious, but that just was. And that's because I am so angry. Yes. I am so angry.
We all are.
I lived in a state where it was illegal for kids to share a bed because it wasn't a safe sleeping environment. And then, you know what? DCYF will come in and take those kids out of that bed because they're not sleeping safely.
Talk about it.
And now when they say that kids are going to be separated from parents, they mean it. It's the truth. But I don't think any of you really know it because maybe you haven't been exposed to these stories and maybe you don't work with this sector of the society. Right. This sector of the society deserves a home that's heated, that's lit, that has a refrigerator running.
Somebody serving our people, Commissioner, and it's going on far too long.
It's uncomfortable, but it's the truth.
We ask that you would hear the stories of the impacted people that have come today. Please look at the faces of those who are being impacted already without a hike. What would it be with a hike? Be not going to hurt our people. It's gone on far too long.
And remember that PPL, the owner of Rhode Island Energy, made $119 million in profit in the second quarter of 2022. Remember that.
People over profit. People over profit.
People over profit.
People over profit. People over profit. People over profit.
You spend a lot of time telling us this is our legal job. This is what we can do legally. This is what we're allowed to do legally and what we can't. To set us up for disappointment. You have an opportunity to be bold.
That's right.
There are just laws and there are unjust laws.
That's right.
This is an unjust law. You can see the effects.
That's right.
Right? I work for the Sisters of Mercy. The gospel this weekend, it's the rich man. Lazarus wasting away on his doorstep. Yeah. Starving to death on his doorstep. While the rich man feeds his scraps to the dogs.
Right. Come on.
What happens? He ignores him. All it would have taken was for him to notice we're on your doorstep. Right here telling you about our suffering.
That's right.
Pay attention. Be
Thank
bold.
you, sister. Excuse me. Can I ask one thing? Sir, you the commissioner, and you looking down at your paperwork, and we struggling to get your attention. Why would you be that rude to us if we're not being rude to you? Can you give me an answer to that? Because it's very puzzling to me. A gentleman of your caliber and your knowledge and wisdom that you're supposed to have, you could not give us that much attention. We are that bad in your life or towards you. There's no physical harm. There's only verbal harm if it's bothering you. That bad. But I would like to have an answer. Do you have anything to say to any of us? Even me. I'm an innocent bystander.
So I've listened to everything that's been said today very carefully, and I continue to do that. Whether I'm looking down.
Speak up so everybody can hear you.
I've listened very carefully to everything that's been said today, and we listened very carefully to everything that's been said at the public hearings. And whether I'm looking down or looking up or looking to the side, or whether I smiled to be friendly rather than to be hostile, is not any disrespect to anything that anyone said or that anyone is doing today. You have an absolute right to protest. You have an absolute right to disagree with anything that we may or may not do. We haven't finished our discussion and our votes yet. You chose to interrupt that to have your say. We've sat here and listened to all of it. We haven't even completed the meeting yet. And there are steps that we may be able to take as we further discuss these issues that will impact how much these rates affect A60 customers. And we have limited authority as to what we can and can't do. But you shouldn't listen, we had the public hearing. Many of you, not all of you, but many of you were here for the public hearing. You have a right to criticize the law. You have a right to
Then
say...
it is clear that the public hearing did not mean anything.
Representative...
Despite hearing countless traumatic tales, excuse me, Commissioner, despite hearing countless...
Now, Representative, excuse me.
Despite hearing countless testimony from the public, you dismissed all of that because the only hearing that seemed to have mattered was the evidence hearing. The only hearing that seemed to have mattered were the big wigs that could afford lawyers.
Well,
And the
Representative
matter of the fact is that the
Representative
law does
Newt-
not require you to vote yes. Yes, you can motion and say, technically, they submitted all the necessary paperwork. But the law does not say the PUC must vote yes.
Well,
If that is the truth.
Representative, as you know very well, being an elected representative.
Who looks out for the necessary needs of my community.
Correct.
And will take stances that are uncomfortable and bold, even if it means going up against different lobbyists, even if it means going up against corporate interests. Yes, that is what I do in my role as an elected official. As appointed officials who donated generous amounts to Gina Raimondo when she was governor, which then thereafter appointed you, I know you don't have the same level of accountability.
Representative,
True.
you know better than that. I served for 5 decades in the General Assembly, just like you are now. And I did everything as best I could in those days to act in the best interests of the community that I represented. And let me finish, please. And you know full well, as a member of the legislature, that a number of the issues that you're concerned about and were discussed earlier by Commissioner Anthony didn't pass in the legislature. They didn't get a majority of the vote.
No,
and you know, let me finish.
Don't.
No, you're not going to keep interrupting me. You're not going to keep
The reason why they're
interrupting me all
helping for this study
day.
is because Rhode Island Energy went and they lobbied against it, and the PUC refused to take a stance every time the George Wiley Center tried to build their
No,
application.
it's not our place to take the stance. That's a role for the legislature and all the good people, and all the good people who are here today.
Work for National Grid, opposed to public
Your own law.
energy containment plan. Abigail, 2 years ago, the PUC had a PIP at your door. It was requested. So maybe you're not paying attention. Maybe Cindy Fries, who had worked for National Grid, didn't inform you to be part of the process. We've worked on a percentage income payment plan for years. And these folks here, their bills wouldn't be as high if that was passed.
And Commissioner Anthony said earlier in the hearing.
You've had it on
No,
your
let me
desk.
finish. You can't keep interrupting. Well, you can, but then we're not having a dialogue.
Well,
So, Commissioner-
dialogue
You never had a dialogue
for
to begin with.
decades.
Fine.
Use your expertise to help the people. Well, no,
we have-
Let me finish
we-
talking to you. How about an impact
Oh.
report? I'm going. Have a social impact
Right.
report before you vote. You can vote on that
There,
today.
right there.
Impact report. Impact
That's what
report.
needs to
Impact report. Impact report. Impact report.
Impact
Impact report.
I just want to say something. Like, I don't come here to represent anybody. I just want to say this, like, before I go off real quick. Honestly, like, if you guys feel as though, like, the responsibility that you guys were, you know, whatever comes with this job, if you guys don't feel as though, like, you can fulfill that requirement, it'd be in your best interest to resign then, because it's not an insult to you, but more so, like, it's literally in your name, yo. Like, let's not make this hard. First of all, I forget which one of you commissioners are up here. Actually, the tone that you're talking to us, oh, you know, procuring energy isn't as simple as buying groceries. No shit, Sherlock. What the fuck?
talk about ever.
Like, y'all got me ticked off in here right now.
There's no
There's
no place here for foul language.
That's disrespectful, bro.
No, it's not disrespectful.
It is
Well,
disrespectful.
there's no place
It is
for
disrespectful.
talking
And
down
let
to
me
people
tell you
like
why
that.
it's disrespectful. Let me tell you why it's disrespectful, bro. Because I am a shareholder, bro. Yeah, I do that. And I tell my little cousins and stuff like that to buy companies. So at the end of the day, the shareholders, they have the responsibility to also understand the level of execution before they purchase these shares, to understand the risk they're taking on. What are you talking about, bro? So don't insult us here like this. This is a mockery. This is a mock. I don't even like coming out because I get too emotional, bro, and I'll start shaking. All right. You guys come here and think that you can put on a charade and fool us and think that we have no intelligence or no rights or no ability to advocate for ourselves. You guys host meetings in the wee hours in the morning when you know people are working, bro.
Right.
There's too much that we have to talk about today for it even to begin. That's why you guys go on recess.
Or walk out.
Whatever the case may be. A negligence of responsibility. Real talk. It's in your name. Think about it. Think about it. Public Utilities Commission. You guys are appointed. Appointed. That is a gift from God. Quite literally. That someone bestows this responsibility upon you. upon you. All right? So, with all that being said, all I'm coming here today, reiterate the first point. If you don't understand what's going on right now, and you're not acting in the interest of the public, it'd be in your best interest to resign. Secondly, while I was on the phone a couple of days ago, talking to people, I'm not going to reveal their personal information. 2 of them are disability people. One of them is a mother of someone who has 4 kidneys. Did you know that if you get a kidney transplant, you can't get it removed from you once it's in you and it's dead? Did you know that? All right? And the other person I was talking to could not be present because he is paralyzed. Fix your shit.
Thank you for sharing your emotions with us.
So what I'd like to state to you, I've lived in 3 separate locations, North Providence, and again in Providence. At all 3 locations, I have paid for 3 to 5 other people's electric bills. I've reached out numerous times. Your answer to me is, call your landlord. There's something wrong with the wiring. Well, I'm on Section 8, which is a federal program, right? So we should know that I shouldn't have 2 breaker boxes in my home. You guys know I shouldn't have A, B, C, and D, but you guys just allow it to go on. My question, though, is, when you guys were presented a few months or a year back with information in terms of Rise, right, and Evergreen and these other companies that you guys are using, you guys admitted through emails to hold back invoices to the following year, right? This is public. Y'all can look it up online. Yes, don't shake your head no. Don't shake your head no. It's public. You admitted the Utilities Commission and the administrators went back and forth with the contractors and told them to hold those invoices so that you guys can meet your 100%, whatever the case may be. Go ahead, I'll let you speak.
Thank you.
You don't think we're educated, huh?
No, ma'am, I didn't get a chance to respond yet. We identified that, we're investigating it, and we will do a thorough investigation.
Are you going to do it? So you're going to do your own investigation on you holding back invoices from...
Ma'am, we don't prepare invoices. We're not the utility company.
No, you told them to hold off on preparing their invoices.
No, ma'am, there's absolutely no evidence to support that. In fact, they acknowledged they made mistakes. We're investigating it.
So why do you still have them as a company that's providing resources to our communities?
Ma'am, I haven't finished my answer to your first question. If you please let me do that. So we're going to thoroughly investigate that, and we're going to report what happened, why it happened, and then we'll determine what, if any, sanctions we'll impose on the company for doing it.
Okay.
Did you do a social impact study? Will you?
So
you will stay here until you say, yes, I will.
He's correct. So whether it's a for-profit business, a non-profit business, a product, right? You can't sell something to somebody unless they want it or they need it. So you can have $1 billion idea with a bunch of money, and guess what? If the people don't want to use it, it goes down the shithole where it belongs. So at the end of the day, right, if you are a Public Utilities Commission and you're here to do a job that's supposedly to serve us, but it's really a monopoly, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, you have the obligation to survey your participants who are actively using your services. Now, if you're not doing so, that means you clearly disregard the folks that you're quote-unquote serving, and all you care about is creating more debt so you can allocate it where you see fit. Have a good day.
Now, I'm back to the point. All of my fellow friends and associates, acquaintances, I would like to know, what am I supposed to do with my 2 kids that's 9 and 15? How am I going to explain to them if my electric goes off? Because I'm already up to $5,000 on both bills. I got my rent $1,500. What do I do to tell my children when that electricity goes off? How do I explain it to them? Do I look at they cry? Do I look at them suffer with blankets over them? where do we go if it's a blizzard and it's cold? Can I go to the landlord, back to the
reopen the
landlord?
meeting
attorney,
here
back to
for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in a situation right now where it's like the courtroom where we're deliberating, and I know it's an emotional time. I get that.
It's not emotional, sir, it's detrimental.
And so what I'd like to say is this: we need to do complete our business here on the open meeting and take the vote. So we haven't finished that. And so what we'll have to do here is that if you are entitled to sit there quietly and listen and watch through our deliberations. But if someone is disruptive, they will have to be removed, and you'll have to go watch it on the internet or watch it on a recording later. This is not participatory; it's an open meeting, and so I just ask everyone to sit quietly. And if anyone is being disruptive, then the police officers will be
Your
removing
business is
them.
social murder.
All right.
And
So
so-
we ask that
So-
you reject the rate increases moving
We-
forward. We ask that you cut the Rhode Island profits from 10% to 6%. We ask that you consider to conduct a social impact statement before you consider a motion. We ask that you hold meetings for those that speak different languages to hear. And we ask that you pass a peak percentage income payment plan. That's
meeting
what
is
we're
still in
asking,
recess?
or to drop it off the docket.
This meeting
To
is still in
drop
recess.
it off the
The
docket.
meeting is not in recess.
Drop
The
it
meeting-
You
off
said it was
the
in
docket.
recess. You did not call it back to
Drop
order.
it off the docket.
Drop it
When
off
I came in, maybe you
Drop
didn't
it off the
hear.
docket.
It's been
Drop it off the
We're not
docket.
in recess. We're
Drop it
meeting
off the
is
docket.
taking place.
Drop it off the docket. 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 Drop it off the docket.
Everyone's gotta leave.
Drop it off the docket.
It's in
Drop it off the docket. 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 Drop it off the docket.
I'm out of here.
Drop it off the docket. 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 Drop it off the docket.
So for the record, the law does not require them to vote yes on these rate increases. Despite all the legal technicalities that they want to hide behind, it is within their purview, it is within their power, and if they're truly committed to serving the public, then they will vote no on these rate hikes, and they will reconvene with Rhode Island Energy and all the different stakeholders, most importantly the community, to ensure that we do not see these record level rate hikes, which will result in evictions, will result in homelessness, because the 47% electricity rate is not
Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket.
All right, please clear out our line.
Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the
You are not asking questions. The cost has increased. The cost is passed on to us. My income has not increased by 50%, right? So how can I pay?
We're asking you to stop.
You gotta clear out.
Drop it off the docket.
Drop it off the docket. Don't rubber stamp social murder. Don't rubber stamp social
Drop it off
murder.
the docket. Drop it off the docket. Drop it off the docket. We're not gonna apologize for the inconvenience because you haven't been
Officers, we're
educated.
asking you to
You haven't
stop.
been educated by us. You haven't listened to us.
We're asking you to stop.
The inconvenience that you're causing people, the harm that you're creating is going to be a legal case against you. So you can quote all the legal paradigms to excuse yourself. You're not excused.
Do a social impact statement now. Make a commitment. Don't wash your hands in innocence. 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 I'm almost stuck, but don't wash your hands in innocence. Don't wash your hands in innocence. Don't wash your hands in innocence. Social murder. Social murder.
Officers,
Don't
please stop.
wash your hands in innocence. Social murder, I say. Don't wash your hands in innocence. Don't wash your hands in innocence. Social murder, I say.
I was going to say maybe here.
It is important that you take a stand for the public.
Ma'am, we'll.
May I grab your stuff?
Please grab your stuff.
I'm asking you to stop. I don't know why it's wrong to speak about Gandhi.
I'm not saying it's wrong.
Well, then why am I being asked to leave?
Because it's not
I'm not going to be able to afford my insurance, my health insurance anymore. I'm not going to be able to afford to pay it.
Good.
I won't be able to have my treatment anymore.
Taxpayers pay for it.
My Blue Cross insurance is critical to my life, to survival. I'm just asking you, please, please,
Okay.
please, please.
Just want to be quiet.
Why don't we try to restart here?
Chairman, I move that we reinstate, restart the meeting, excuse me, we're in recess.
Yeah, and I took it out of recess to start it. It was hard to hear that, so we're actually in the meeting. There was some misunderstanding as well as what the first vote was merely a vote to they complied with the plan and tried to distinguish between what the rate impacts would be versus the fact that the company had under the law an entitlement to recover the cost through some means that is approved by the commission. So we've taken care of that particular vote. The next item that I had for us to consider on the decisions that we have to make really relate to the timing of the Attorney General's credit. And we're very, very fortunate to have this credit being applied because it provides some substantial mitigation. If you take it on a 6-month basis, what's happened for the rate increase that's occurring.
If you're watching, editorial note, they continue to pay homage to the governor and the attorney general as if they'd done something.
We got to a point where at least some of the parties indicated that they preferred to have the credit come as early as possible. And when we had the discussion at the hearings with the parties, I was thinking that it was better to have the credit occur in January and February when the rate impacts might be the hardest and the highest because of the usage. But Counsel Jen Wood for the Wiley Center really had a different view, and I at that time when we were at the hearings, I said, look, I'm not an expert on this. I'm looking for reviews for the people that actually address these issues every day or often in their jobs and in things that they do in their job. And I really respect what Counsel Wood had said, that no, we'd rather have it in November. In October, there was already a $43 million arrearage forgiveness that was taking place, and the company did not want to have both going on at the same time for programming purposes and the billing system. And so they basically said they couldn't do both in the same month. So the earliest possible spreading of the credit or the crediting of or applying of the application of the credit was November. And I'm fine with that. And I'm ready to approve having the credit be applied for the month of November. But I don't know if you have a different view on this.
Before you make any votes, I just want to clarify for the open meeting agenda. Your first vote was in docket 4978.
And we're taking both dockets at the same time. That's how we want to do it.
I understand that. I just need you to be very clear that this next motion is in docket 2207JE, and then when you go back to last resort service, make it clear that you've moved back into the other docket, so that it's just clear for the record.
Yeah, so the record is on this one is the only one that relates to the other docket, and everything else that we do relates to the 4978. Any different opinion on that?
No, Chairman, I would just to be clear, the schedule, as you've presented it, is that the $43.5 million in arrearage forgivenesses secured by the Attorney General will be applied to customer bills in October, and you are suggesting that the approximately $62 credit, also secured by the Attorney General, would be applied to customer bills, to all customer bills that exist on November 1st of this year? Or to all customer accounts that exist on November 1st?
Customers as of November 1st, and the credits would apply. And this would, by the way, we were talking about the electric rate, in this one, in this docket, the council's point, there's a $50 million credit, 32.5 go to the electric, but there's also 17.5 going to the gas customers. So this particular motion would relate to both electric and gas in distribution of the entire 50 million. And it would be based on the customer identified as of November 1st. If that makes sense.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I concur with that. I think it's important to get the credit to the customers as soon as possible. I think that was the intention of the Attorney General in the settlement. And I think the soonest we can do that is November, and I concur with that suggestion that you're making, Sophie. Thank you.
So when I have some votes that are prepared for this, and they're going to sound convoluted, so I want to explain why they sound convoluted. There was a tariff that was filed, and when we use the word tariff in our industry, we don't mean just a number. It's actually the terms and conditions on how the rates or the services work. And it was laid out the process for the distribution of this credit. And so what I'm doing is I'm amending that tariff document that was filed by changing the dates and the specificity that it had on how they determine which customers are entitled to it. And that's the reason why when I do the two votes, it's referring to the language of the tariff, but its effect is that the credit for both electric and gas will occur for customers who are customers of record as of November 1st. And so what I'm going to do is I'll make each motion separately, and we can take them up. And if you have any questions about it, that's fine. But the first motion I have is to move to approve the proposed electric customer bill credit tariff for effect November 1st, 2022, except that the applicability will apply to customers identified as of November 1st, 2022. Applicability shall be changed to, quote, this tariff applies to each electric distribution customer account in all rate classes as of November 1st, 2022, close quote. And the term bill credit amount shall be changed to, quote, a one-time credit will be applied to each customer account eligible under Section 1, close quote. Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The second motion is move to approve the proposed gas customer bill credit tariff sheet filed as Section 7, Miscellaneous Services, Schedule C, Sheet 10, 13th revision for effect November 1st, 2022, except that the applicability will apply to customers identified as of November 1st, 2022. Applicability shall be, quote, the term applicability, quote, close quote, shall be changed to, quote, this tariff applies to each gas distribution customer account in all rate classes as of November 1st, 2022, close quote. Bill credit amount shall be changed to, quote, a one-time credit will be applied to each customer account eligible under Section 7, Schedule C, Section 4.1, close quote.
Chairman, I'm sorry, that I think you left out, it should be a uniform one-time credit.
Did I leave that out?
I think so. I think it was just a drafting error.
Oh, it was just a drafting error. Did I leave that out in both of those?
I noticed it just now.
Okay, that was the intention.
It
Maybe
should
when we
be.
prepared it, we should have prepared it with. So what? How would
It would be just add. It should be a uniform one-time credit so that everybody's getting the same amount because that was the agreement. It was just a drafting error. So it should say a uniform one-time credit will be applied.
So we just add that sentence to
We just add the word. You read a one-time credit will be applied to each customer account. It should be a uniform. Just to make it clear.
Okay, so we'll put the word uniform after the word a. And I think we're going to have to amend the prior one as well to add the word uniform after the word a. So let me finish this one. It's how I read it, except the word uniform appears after the word A in that last quotation. Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we just want to move to amend the first motion that we did to include the word uniform after the word A. Do I hear a second? on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, there's no motion needed on another item, but Rhode Island Energy requested the Commission to include some language in the order that allows it to characterize the credit as a refund of amounts previously collected. We had a lot of questions about this, but we got assurances under oath this wasn't affecting the ratepayers, and I think I understood what they were trying to do once we went through that. So I'm comfortable with the wording, but we don't have to have a vote on that, but we'll reflect the requested wording when we issue the written order. Is that what we, Cindy, did I get that right?
It is, Chairman. In speaking with Alan, the one thing that the company should be very clear on is demonstrating in its upcoming earnings report that this allowed accounting treatment in no way affects the earnings sharing calculation to the detriment of ratepayers. So they will need to make an assessment in that report, and Alan wanted to impress upon them that it better be very clear.
Very good, very good. I certainly agree with that. So, just following the schedule, the next item is going back to the original docket, 479. I don't think we have anything else in the taking care of that. And this is the Governor McKee and the Office of Energy Resources have proposed to apply $3.8 million of RGGI funds. And this is, again, an issue of our question of timing. And I think that there was a general, I don't know if everybody specifically agreed to it, but I think no one was really anyway objecting to the idea that we would take the $3.8 million and split it over the months of December and January for a low-income class. And I was particularly interested again with what Councilor Jen would say on this, whether she thought it was better to do it in 1 month. And she actually recommended the 2 months. And I respect her opinion on that. That was why I'm convinced that we should do it that way, which makes sense in spreading it that way. I don't know if you have any other comments beyond that.
The only other comment, I think I agree to applying the Governor McKee's RGGI credits in December and January. The only other suggestion I would make is that those are also uniform credits applied to all bills that are issued in December, and all A60 bills that are issued in December and January, and that the utility track that expenditure, and we can reconcile any under or over crediting following that period.
Okay, very good. I'm writing some additional language here about the uniform credits.
And Mr. Chairman, I take it that means that half of those funds will be applied in December and half in January.
I think the company will have to do some forecasting about their A60 enrollment in December and their A60 enrollment in January, and come up with an estimated uniform credit, probably half and half approximately. But
well, I realize they have to estimate it to determine what the dollar amount is of the customers, but of the $3.8 million that's being allocated, are we allocating 1.9 in December and 1.9 in January? Or are we allocating the whole 3.8 and they're going to have to give us a...
They would have, for example, they may have more, they may forecast that they're going to have more A60 customers in January than they typically do in December. So I think I would leave it to the company to figure out what the appropriate uniform credit is for each month based on their expected number of A60 customers in those months.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, but if we split it, then they would know exactly how much they're going to spend in each month, and they wouldn't have to reconcile it. But I'm okay either way. It's going to have the same effect, other than you don't know in December how many customers you're going to have in January.
I think it has a slightly different effect. In the case that you're suggesting, they would know exactly how much they're going to spend. In the case that I'm suggesting is that customers would know exactly what they're going to receive as a credit. And so it provides a little bit more certainty to customers on the size of their credit, and then less certainty to the company on how much they'll have to reconcile here afterwards.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
In the company, in the motion I have here, we're also directing them to make a compliance filing within 10 business days, so we make sure that there's no misunderstanding of how they're doing this. And we'd have another, if there was some tweak that we wanted to make in the compliance filing to make it consistent with what we're intending here, we have the opportunity to do that.
And when we combine the Attorney General's credit, the Reg credit, and the 25% discount, based on the analysis that we were presented in the evidentiary portion of the hearing, there'll be no increase effectively in what the people in the A6, customers in the A60 class will have to pay.
So
last year.
division attachment AM1, that was Mr. Mancini's calculation that he filed yesterday, show that the monthly bill impact for an A60 customer after receiving the 25% discount, the Attorney General's bill credit that we just approved a minute ago in this Governor McKee's Reggie credit that we're considering, that the monthly bill impact would be a negative 87 cents or a negative $5.21 over the 6-month winter period. And that for a 16 customer, the Attorney General's credits result in a 30% reduction in the rate increase. That's my percentage calculation, so that might be a little bit off, but it mitigates the bill increase by about 30% for A16 customers and results in a bill reduction for A60 customers.
Thank you. I think that's important to have on the record.
Yeah, and I just stated another way. If you take the, if you look at what, if you have a hypothetical low-income customer, and they had a certain amount of usage in the 6-month period last winter, there's certain you could calculate what they would have paid over the 6 months in total. Now, if you take when you apply all these credits, when you apply the credits that are here, and you compare that same 6 months for this coming winter against last winter, an A60 customer is almost in the identical position they were last winter, except there's actually a slight decrease. And so we're fortunate to have had these two credits from the Attorney General and Rhode and Governor McKee as essentially eliminated the impact over a 6-month period for the most vulnerable citizens, some of which I think we hear today during our other hearings, and didn't have a chance to hear that. And so our most vulnerable citizens on the A60 rate are not going to see an increase in their total winter bills compared to last year. And it's a really important point to make about what the outcome is for that. And so that would be the effect of the combination of the two votes. So I'm gonna make a motion on this, unless there's something else that needs to be said. But that's to your point too, stated another way, Commissioner Reynolds, right? So the motion is the company is directed to determine the forecasted number of A60 customers for December 2022 and January 2023 and calculate a uniform credit for December and January, spreading the actually it's not even, the word even rather than uniform, an even credit for December and January, spreading the $3.8 million of regional greenhouse gas initiative funds across these forecasted bills. The credit will be applied to action. Do I need the word uniform here, Cindy? John?
It's better to have it.
So this shall be a uniform credit that will be applied to all actual bills in the A60 rate class in December and January. Therefore, the company is directed to make a reconciliation filing with the Commission. The company is directed to make a compliance filing within 10 business days, providing a description of how the crediting will be implemented. So again, they'll file an explanation, and we can align that with our intention here. After we see the filing. Am I missing anything? John, we good? Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now the next item that I had in sequence are the issues of deferrals. And one is the customer charge deferral, which I'd like to hold for last from a moment, because I want to talk about the other one that I identified first. Is back in 2018, there was an increase. It wasn't the same level as we was experiencing here, but the commission at that time, I wasn't on the commission, but I was working with the division at the time, took the total amount of the increase, included it and spread it out to create what we call a 12-month rate, so that we wouldn't have a summer and winter. And so the increase that was coming in the winter just basically got spread evenly, and it reduced the impact during the winter period. And so, for reasons that I understand, there are some parties that suggested that we do the same thing. The difficulty here, and a substantial challenge associated with doing that, is that we have completely different circumstances today, and it's twofold. One is what I alluded to when we first started here, is that it seems pretty clear that it's highly likely that a winter rate that comes in next year will be even higher than we have this year, if in fact the bidding that takes place is affected by the current market conditions. So we're looking at a future where we're going to be repeating this, and maybe it could actually be even more difficult at that point. So when you try to take some of the dollars that normally would be paid out in this winter and say, I'm going to do it next winter, we would be exacerbating a problem then and making the situation even worse. So that's the first concern that I had. The second is that we have what's referred to as municipal aggregations, which is fine. It's statutory, and there's an aggregator, Good Energy, who actually participated in these proceedings. And they indicated in the hearings that they're intending to make a proposal to the 6 communities that they're serving, which is up to about 25% of the entire last resort population. In cities of Providence, in Central Falls, there's Pawtucket, Newport. I don't have the whole list in front of me, but it's a substantial number of customers that where there's a high probability that they will leave last resort service in May or June, whenever that time period was. So if we're taking amounts of $195 million rate increase on the assumption that we'll just have everybody pay for it later, and then those customers leave last resort service, that means that large amount of funds that were intended to be paid for by everybody that was on last resort service in the winter will not be paid for by everybody. It will just be narrowed down to a smaller group of customers, and the impact will be greater on those remaining customers, because that stranded cost, if you will, would now be just switched over to the customers who have left. That's a real concern, and really a reason why trying to do a deferral on the last resort service rate itself and spread it, as was done in 2018, really doesn't work and could really wreak havoc for us at a later time, which is the reason why I can't support this. In fact, the witnesses themselves, the company had a witness that testified to this, the division raised this issue, and the Office of Energy Resources, who actually assisted in putting this in play, had an expert witness there who identified this problem, said this is basically one of the downsides of doing it this way. They also put in play, also were supporting the customer credit as well. But I'm very, very concerned about what aggregation is going to do and the unknown of what's going to be happening to power rates on a going forward basis, which is really what I was talking about when we first started the open meeting. So that's where I am. And we don't have to take a vote on this. This was not a proposal that was put in by the company formally. It was just, should we be considering this? And I considered it, and I just don't think it would be responsible for us to do it that way. It creates a great risk for the ratepayer population. But that's how I feel, what my reaction is to that particular proposal for deferral.
Yep, I think you've covered it all. The Attorney General, the division, Good Energy discouraged and cautioned against the deferral of commodity costs. The witness for the Office of Energy Resources, the Attorney General's office, Good Energy's witness all explained that doing so can hamper or undermine the ability of suppliers to compete with last resort service and hamper the efforts of municipal aggregation to provide choices to electric customers in the 7 communities that have already embarked on community choice aggregation and those that will do so in the future. I, for one, really am anxious to see the maturity of our competitive supply market, and for those reasons, I agree that the record indicates that we shouldn't entertain a deferral of commodity costs.
I don't have anything to add to that, Mr. Chairman.
If I use a metaphor on this, I know we're going to be sailing on turbulent waters this winter, but if we try to turn the ship on a different path, we will send that ship right into the path of a hurricane potentially, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very worried about doing that kind of a shift. So we can leave it at that. There's no vote on that one. There was the other one, customer charge deferral, but I'm going to stop there for a second.
Yeah, no, I'd like to talk about the customer charge deferral. This is just, clearly there is rate shock. We've been able to achieve a winter over winter bill reduction for our A60 customers, but there's still going to be rate shock for our A16 customers, and waiving the customer charge for the winter period is one more thing that we can do. So are you ready for a motion? So I would move that the company is directed to defer collection of the customer charge for all customers in the A16, A60, and CO6 rate classes for a 6-month period. Beginning October 1st, 2022, the company is authorized to book a regulatory asset for the deferred charges applicable to each fiscal year for recovery at a later date in a manner and timeline approved by the Commission. The deferred charges shall accumulate interest at the customer deposit rate. The company is directed to file within 60 days a proposal to recover the deferred charges. The company is directed to consult with the parties in the docket prior to filing the proposal.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Very good. Before we take the vote, I did want to point out that calculation of what that amounts to a deferral that is about $18.7 million deferral.
Yeah,
What's the value, the calculated value of that?
An A16 customer would see another $6 per month taken, zeroed out on their bill for $36 total over the 6 months. And A60 customers, that would be about $4.50 zeroed out from their monthly bills.
Because they get a 25% discount.
Because they're already at a 25%. So I think combined with, for A16 customers, combined with the Attorney General's credit, that should be a 46% reduction in the bill increase. Again, my math could be off, but that's another mitigation to the bill increase.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. What I wanted to also, item that I wanted. Just reiterating what we have here. First of all, I think that again, we're very fortunate to have had these credits that we were able to apply. We're not going to have them next year unless something else turns up. So we're very, very fortunate. I don't know if we have anything else that we need to address here today except some final comments.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to thank all of the people in the community who participated at the public hearing that we had last Friday, all of the witnesses and lawyers who participated in the evidentiary hearings on Monday and Tuesday, and all of the people who came here today, again, to just express their displeasure with the situation that we find ourselves in, and their displeasure with the size of the increases that ratepayers are incurring in Rhode Island. I think that it's very important for decision making and for public discourse that people are able to speak their minds, to say how they feel, and more importantly, for so many people who told their personal stories of how hard it is to live on very limited resources in our society, in the age that we live in. And I think we're all very concerned about how these rates and other things that we have to face in this economy affect the neediest and most vulnerable people in our community, and we appreciate their courage and their openness and their willingness to share that with us. And I think that had a lot to do with the efforts that we made to do what we feel we can do within the authority that we're given by the legislature and by the federal agencies to address these rates. And I want to thank them all for that. And even though we didn't do everything they asked us to do, I want them to know that we heard them and we weighed this and considered it very carefully. And I know it was very difficult for all of us who sit here as commissioners to make these decisions, and we are going to do our best within this system that we have to make these impacts as soft as we can within the circumstances that we're forced to deal with. Thank you.
Commissioner, do you have anything? My one final thing that I remember, I was pausing before because there was something else that I had in my notes, and I'm now seeing it. The Attorney General had also suggested that we find a way to allow customers to make a choice to defer, and I think that there is an availability to do that through the budget billing plan that the company has, and there's some time now between now and when the rates are really going to be affecting customers that are outside the A60 class getting the other additional benefits, so that the company could actually aggressively advertise the budget billing choice that people have, which effectively allows them to defer by having a calculation made that spreads the cost of their electric utility service over 12 months, and they do it on their own. I think that maybe some adjustments to the budget billing plan might be helpful. For example, instead of using a past rate, if they did a forecast of the rate, they could help their customers through this budget billing plan process. And I'm not going to sit here and try to make a motion on how they might do that, but I want to encourage the company to address the parameters and look at the terms and conditions they have for the budget billing plan, and try to put as much flexibility for eligibility in place, and come back to us if you need a change. Whether it opens up eligibility wider, whether it has a feature that allows a forecasting of what the price ought to be, but make it as easy as possible for customers to understand that they have a choice to defer on their own. And when they do it, it's done in a practical way, and it's not locked into some terms that were put in place years ago that really never anticipated what we're facing right now. But customers have the ability to choose to spread it themselves if they can't afford come December, January, and February when the rates start really impacting them. So I hope the company has heard that, and I think I want to write something about that in the order. That was the additional thing that I wanted to say before we finished. So the bottom line to all of this is that the results, because of the credits that were obtained by the Attorney General and provided by Governor McKee, we've taken care of those that are most vulnerable. And the credit also helps apply to others that for the month of November. And we have the situation of, I think, if we can try to get the budget billing plan more flexible, that would help as well. I hope everybody understands that we're looking at a future of rough waters, not just for this winter, but the markets, the price of power in this region from where we get our power is volatile. And I think we're going to continue to be facing lots of challenges in the region and here in Rhode Island. Not only here, but also with our neighbors will be facing it as well. So I thank everyone, and I appreciate those that stayed and stayed respectfully. I do understand the emotion that was expressed on this, but we did well the best we could here, and I think that the company has some opportunities here to try to work with people that are struggling to pay their bills with payment plans and other things, and no one should hesitate to call them. The moratorium period will come in place, so people won't be getting shut off. But they ought to be working with the company to try to work through payment plans as well. I'd like to thank everyone else.
Shame! 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 Shame!
Well, I have to reconvene because I missed one vote. We had,
You should all be ashamed. You did not do
that
what
one,
in the interest of the
that one
public.
vote was, we've done everything we could. We set up all the credits and everything, but we have to do the final vote on all the factors that and rates that we discussed. So I move that the factors, rates, and adjustments are approved for usage on and after October 1st, 2022. And the company is directed to make a compliance filing by the close of business on Tuesday, September 27th. Do we hear a second? Oops, you can say it without going on the mic. Okay, yeah, it was second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
You don't have to legitimize
So now,
it. You can
do
resign.
I have it, am I all set now, John?
It's
Okay,
not
now
about
we're
insulting
officially
you.
adjourned.
Your names are on there.